Hey, Colleen.
Hey, Alicia.
Welcome to
Right
Fucking Now.
now.
Hey, it's great to have you back again.
Thank you. Thanks for having me again.
Of course, of course. So, Colleen has a little treat for us that we're going to start off with today. Colleen, what are you going to do for us?
Well, I thought it would be really nice to start today's podcast with a moment of grounding, a moment of meditation. So I recommend that you get yourself comfortable. You can sit back in a comfy chair or on the couch or sit yourself upright on the floor, wherever you want to be. And then let's take a moment to squeeze the shoulders up to the ears and then let them flop down. Make any other adjustments that you'd like. Close the eyes or simply downcast the gaze to the floor. If the nostrils are clear, breathe in and out through the nose. And start to feel your breath in your belly. You can even take your hands onto the belly. And as you breathe in, feel the belly move forwards in space. As you breathe out, feel the belly release towards the back, towards the spine. Don't worry about doing this incorrectly or doing it wrong. Simply breathe and feel the movement that your breath is creating in your belly. If the mind wanders, and it probably will, as soon as you're aware that you are thinking, send that thought out with your exhalation and come back to breathing. Come back to feeling the breath in the belly. We'll stay with this for several more breaths. Now letting your focus come back into the room, to your body, to feeling yourself in your seated position. If the eyes are closed, you can flutter them open. Hello.
Hello, that was lovely.
Well, I thought that would be a great start for our topic today, which is inspiration
Mm.
and that feeling of being inspired. And how do we know when we are inspired versus our thoughts in our mind? For me, that has come from meditating. The discernment has come from meditation, so that quieting my mind then helps me to practice that throughout the day. And when I get thoughts or inspiration, I can usually tell which one it is. And so I was doing my yoga practice a week or so ago, and I don't turn my phone on until I'm done my practice, but I have my phone with me when I meditate, because I usually listen to an Abraham, not when I meditate, when I do my yoga, I usually listen to an Abraham Hicks clip. Well, that morning, as I was doing my practice, I had a thought in my mind, and it was like, oh, I want to take care of this. So I had a group text that I had formed, but I made a mistake when I did this, and I included somebody who shouldn't have been in it. And it was eating at me a little bit because it was a little bit of a professional faux pas. And so I had been ignoring it for a few days, and then I was like, no, like in my practice, I was like, take care of it. So what I did was I just deleted the conversations, because there's no need for me to look at it and continue to remind myself how I messed up. So I was in the process of doing that. I paused my yoga practice, and as my phone was in my hand, you called me. Now, if
Wow.
so, I don't know if you remember, you called me in the morning a week or so ago, but
Yeah.
if I didn't have my phone in my hand, I wouldn't have seen that you were calling. And so for me, that was inspiration, and
Mhm.
that we got to connect for a few minutes that morning, and how lovely when you and I connect. So that was just beautiful. And then I have like other examples where I won't turn my phone on, but I'll look at it and my sister's calling me. And that happens so frequently because I don't turn my phone on all of the time, but I'm getting these messages. Look at your phone. Look at your phone, and I'll be able to pick it up and take a phone call that I want.
That is so cool. I love that. Quick, funny to me story. A couple of weeks ago, I was at dinner with a friend, former colleague. He was talking about how he lost his phone on a canoeing trip.
Mm,
And I didn't say it out loud to him, but I was like, he's gonna get his phone back. Because it had been in like a little like lanyard dry bag sort of thing
mhm.
that you wear around your neck, and he fell in on some rapids, and the lanyard part broke off the string, like the pack part, and I just had this feeling like he's gonna get his phone back. And as we're sitting there at dinner, he gets both a call and an email that they found his phone. And I was like, dude, I should have said something.
Right.
I just had that strong feeling.
Yes.
So yeah, but it's also like so gratifying when those moments happen of like, ah,
Absolutely.
I totally had that strong feeling. So
Right.
in fact, he said just yesterday he said he got it back, just needed to be charged and it turned on just fine. So I thought it was kind of fun. But yeah, so I guess in the moment, like how do we know if something is just our monkey brain trying to
Yeah.
get us to, take care of things and check things off a checklist versus something that's really inspired?
Right. I think a lot of that comes from practice, and also the nagging. And the nagging to me can sometimes be more the inspiration. So the other day, so I'm at Grand Teton National Park right now, and we're in a dispersed campsite or camping area in the national forest. And we've never been here before. So we drive in, and there's a big parking lot that you can park in, which we didn't even know about. And then there's also designated sites. So we start the long gravel road. And as I was driving, and we were approaching this campsite, and I saw this guy like polishing his windows and looking at him, checking his rig out. And I was like, oh, I want to talk to him. And I said something to Graham, to my husband, and I'm like, I want to talk to him. But then it was like, well, should I not? Um, maybe we should just keep driving. And and then it came up again and again. So I pulled over, and I was like, hey, and the awkward thing was like, I'm the one who wanted to talk. I had to lean over my husband to talk to this guy, but the impulse was so strong. I was like, I'm doing it. So, we put the window down. I'm talking to this guy. Not that Graham didn't talk at all, but it was me interacting. And I just had this connection with this guy who had this amazing rig that he had custom made. And so he's been on the road now for 3 months. So we had, some of that conversation. And then we moved on, take care, nice chatting with you. We continue to drive. We drive through the campground. It's not a campground, but the sites, and they're all full. So we turn around, come back, and Graham hops out and asks this guy if we can share his campsite.
Whoa.
And he said yes. So then we got even more connection with him, and chatting, and great conversation. And
Oh,
he recently bought a house in Costa Rica. We love Costa Rica. We've held yoga retreats in Costa Rica, so we made that connection. And there's no denying it was my intuition to make
oh,
this connection. And then it was just so easy when we didn't have a spot to stay. But then
mhm.
after the fact, we found out that there's a big parking lot that we could have parked in, and we wouldn't have even asked. So had we known that we could park in that lot, we probably wouldn't have asked to share the spot, and then we wouldn't have had that super great connection. So for me, that's another example of inspiration. And it played out. I think we have the best spot in this entire area.
That's so cool.
looking like out at the mountains right here. And so yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. One of the things that I've been thinking about with regards to what's inspiration versus what's just like the human brain. And for me, it's checklists. Oh, I need to do this. I got to follow
Mhm.
up with that thing, right?
Yes.
And for me, it truly is that feeling of the difference of like I have to do the thing, right? I've got to call somebody back. Oh, I got to send that text. Oh, I got to, look up that one thing, versus like, ooh, I want to.
Yes.
And I recently, it was funny, my mom, um, she lives down here in the wintertime in Arizona. She's back home in North Dakota during the summer. And, we don't get a lot of chances to connect. I travel a lot, blah, blah, blah. But just the other day, I had a true, ooh, I should call mom, right? And that's not very typical for me, particularly with mom, but we just had such a great, lovely conversation, and got to share
Mhm.
some things with her and get her feedback on some things. And so, noticing, I think really taking note
Mhm.
of that kind of distinction and in that feeling, right?
Right.
What does feel exciting, right? What feels irresistible in that instance of you needing to talk to the guy in the campground, right? That
Right.
felt like I can't resist this. I have to do this, right? And so, that's
Right. And that distinction between, oh, I haven't talked to so and so in a while and I'm really past due. I need to call so and so. That's not so much inspiration, more feeling like there's something you're supposed to be doing. Whereas during the middle of the day, when you get that, oh, Alicia just popped into my mind. I'm going to call her or I'm going to
yeah.
text. That's inspiration, and and we can also learn by what's the outcome of your is that can help you to determine whether it was a thought or inspiration. So a couple maybe within the past 2 weeks, I was laying in bed in our new flat in Idaho, and we were trying to fall asleep, and I was laying there, and then I was like, "Open your eyes," and I opened my eyes, and we have a mountain behind us, as I talked about last time. So even though the window's there, I can still see the sky. And as I opened my eyes, saw a shooting star, and it was
Whoa.
like in that moment, like it was so quick, like open your eyes, and I did it, and I got to see the shooting star. And so no big deal if I didn't listen to that and didn't open my eyes, I wouldn't have even known what it was about. But because I did open my eyes, I got to see a shooting star.
That is great. So I think to tie this back to our beginning exercise,
Yes.
right? When we get into a practice, building the muscle around meditation, the muscle around quieting our mind, right? Sitting stilly,
Mm-hmm.
quietly, it seems to make us more open and more receptive to these types of nudges of inspiration. I'm curious what your thoughts are or experience with that is.
Mm-hmm. So my experience is that as I learn to quiet my mind, I stop or slow down my mind chatter. And then as my mind chatter slows down, I'm able to, because I believe that source is always communicating with us, source, inspiration, intuition, urges, whatever you want to call it. There's always an open channel of communication to us. Are we able to hear it? And so through meditating and through learning to slow the thoughts down and quiet it down, then I'm able to hear the inspiration that does come in.
Mhm.
And so and what I have also become aware of is that it doesn't have to be in the moments of meditating. And in
Mhm.
fact, oftentimes it's not for me. It will be just throughout the day
Yeah.
of being able to distinguish a thought versus inspiration.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's interesting what you said too with regards to that idea of like there's always there's
Mm,
always communication there, right?
hmm.
It's a matter of are we receptive to it or not?
Exactly.
And it reminds me of this passage I was just rereading recently in one of my all-time favorite books, Conversations with God, by Neil Donald Walsh. And Neil is kind of questioning God, like, God, why don't you show yourself to us, right? Why don't you make yourself present? And God's like, what are you talking about? I am always showing myself to you.
Yeah.
And God specifically talks about this idea that um that he communicates through emotions, through experiences, and thoughts. And then he says he also communicates through words. But he says that words tend to be like the least reliable purveyor of truth, right? So instead of
Um,
experience, it's emotion that that are the more pure form of truth because things can get lost in translation when it comes to words.
Absolutely.
But Neil is asking like how do I differentiate like what's coming from the human side versus what's coming from God or inspiration or whatever. God said, um, mine is always your highest thought, your clearest word, and your grandest feeling. Anything less anything less is from another source, right?
Hmm.
So it was highest thought, clearest word, grandest feeling. And he goes on to explain a little bit more. He says the highest thought is always thought of joy. The clearest words are those that which contain truth, and the grandest feeling is the feeling which you call love. So I really like
Yeah.
that, joy, truth, and love too, as ways to
Yes.
distill like what is coming from source, what is inspiration.
Hmm. Right.
Yeah.
And I think we've mentioned how you and I have met um, on an Abraham Hicks cruise last March. And within a couple of days, I knew that I loved you. And
Yep.
I remember we were like, well, actually, I don't remember where we were, but maybe the silent disco. And I was like, I'm going to tell her I love her. And I
Yeah.
did. And it was like that, is this an impulse? And it was love, right? And it was
Yeah.
communicating with that. And it was just like, like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I just said this to this stranger, but I felt it and I knew it. And it was just like, it was pure. And so I just had to say it regardless of how you took it. And,
Totally.
and I feel like that's another example of that impulse, of that inspiration. And now like, and then since then we've been incredibly close.
Yeah, absolutely. Including roommates for
Yes, for the winter.
it was great. My snowbirds. Yeah. No, and I think it is one of these things where we get to practice, we get to practice and we get to check in that idea of something can feel urgent, like ooh, do the thing, do the thing, do the thing, do the thing. But I think it's taking that beat, that pause,
Hmm.
and saying, what state am I in? Right? Am I in a state of receiving, or am I in a state of resistance of sorts?
Right.
Because if the ooh, do the thing is to stop something or to, make somebody wrong or whatever,
Yeah.
like that's coming from a not pure source, right? And so I
Hmm.
think it's even if we're not in the middle of meditation, but instead allowing ourselves that moment, that pause, that little break to just say like, where am I in this
Hmm.
urge, this urgency, right? To act
Right.
on the thing. Is it inspired or is it out of fear or resistance?
Right. And referring to the book, is it joy, truth, and love?
Yep. Yeah, for sure.
Right.
Yeah.
I met Graham, and this is going on 20 years ago. And I met him in November, at the beginning of November, whatever year that was, I think 2005. And and we lived in different states. I lived in New York City and he lived in Nashville. We had some communication after we met, and then 6 weeks later we lived together in New York City. So that was trusting. And it's like, you often hear your gut feeling. What
Mhm.
is that? And like we can feel, some of us can feel emotions in our gut, in our solar plexus area. And which, if you're not sure, that's the space between your navel and the rib cage, in that area. So we get this gut feeling of something, which I relate to inspiration, intuition. And we could have very easily said, this is crazy. We don't even know each other. We live in different states.
Mhm.
but the both of us felt that it was a significant connection, and that's something that we just jumped on, and obviously it was a good decision 20 years later. And I think if you're unsure, it's a matter of what's the worst thing that can happen,
Mm.
or if it didn't work out, no big deal.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that. Yeah, maybe in that moment of pause, right? If there's a little bit of hesitation, running through the scenario, do the mental rehearsal. How does
Hmm.
this play out? Best case. Sure,
Exactly.
you can run the worst case, but also remembering the best case and the
Exactly, putting that in motion. And what are you both looking for, what do you both want, and maybe you don't know at that point. um, so I think if we start to look at things that happen in our life, even if it's something that's happened long ago, what's the outcome of it? And as we've mentioned, it's always going to be in our highest good when it comes from source, when it comes from inspiration. And then there's like divine inspiration, right? So we're inspired all the time to different things, but that doesn't mean that it's actually divine inspiration. So when I'm talking about inspiration, I mean divine inspiration, where it's coming from source. It's a download in, like, hey, take action, that type of thing.
for sure. For sure. It's a week and a half ago, I had the opportunity to see Peter Crone. He's known as the Mind Architect live. And I was really fortunate. The talk that I went to, it was a 2-hour event. There were about 200 people there, and I ended up being one of 3 people that he worked with. He spent about 35 minutes with me
Wow,
back and
that's
forth
special.
session. And I would say one of the clearest messages I got from that moment was this idea that, and we do this so often. I know I'm not the only person who does this, but it's this idea of going after an anti-pattern, right? So I grew up with a pattern in my household, right? We specifically were talking about the notion of love, and love being a very transactional thing. So much so that my parents had a business together, right? Like they weren't life partners, they were business partners, right? And so it was all very transactional. And so I had a pattern that I learned about love.
Mm.
And in adulthood, I've been like, no, I want the anti-pattern of what I
Hmm.
know. And Peter's point is like, that's not how you build. That's not how you
Hmm.
create, right? Because it's coming from a point of resistance of like, I
Sure.
don't want this thing, so I do want this thing.
Hmm.
And it was an interesting kind of fine-tuned distinction. And Abraham does talk about this, but it's a little bit different. Hello. Uh, so it's a little bit different from the standpoint of Abraham talks about this idea of when we know what we don't want, we therefore then know what we do want.
Hmm.
And I think for me, what I took away from that is that creating from the do want space, right? And really being open to the do want space instead of being kind of reactionary to the don't want space.
Hmm.
So it was just an interesting distinction that I heard in a more clear way than I've ever heard before. And I really appreciated that. And so I have to wonder too, like, how does this apply to those moments of inspiration? Right.
Hmm.
Am I acting from a place of like, well, I don't want this thing, so I'm going to be inspired to take this action this other way. Right. Or, and it can be in the like, well, I do want this thing because I'm having this experience I don't want. Right. And
Hmm.
so are we doing something in reaction to something else, or is this truly inspired, right? Is this is
Yes.
excitement? Is this a running to something, not from something? So,
I think too, that point, it's also like, when is the thought coming to you? Has it been on your mind, or are you like doing dishes and all of a sudden you're like getting this idea about what you do want? And that's another way to know that, oh, okay, I wasn't thinking that. That thought came to me.
yeah. Ooh, that's a great one. I love that as a distinction of
Hmm.
inspired thought, right? Is this something I've been mulling on, stewing
Exactly.
over?
It,
Or is this
mhm.
something where I was just going about my day and then all of a sudden, boom, I got struck with inspiration?
Yes. So
Absolutely.
I have another example, and this is a long ago one, but when Graham and I were living in Nashville, we were driving down the street one day and I noticed that there was a house that was being renovated. And I was like, oh, and it had been for sale, but I never really paid attention to it. And I noticed the guy who was working on the house, and then it had my attention. And I was thinking about the house for the next couple days. And then I talked to Graham and I'm like, I think I want to buy that house. And we weren't looking for a house. We weren't talking about buying a house. And we hadn't even seen the house. And so we called the realtor, and they took a couple days to get back to us. And then we went to see it. And when we saw it, we loved it. And then we ended up, through a process, we ended up buying it. And but during that process, what the owner said, well, the house was in contract.
Hmm.
And so, like, after we saw it, somebody else had put an offer on it, and so they didn't get back to us. And then like several days went by, and I was like, I called and I said, I need to hear back from you about the house that I'm going to buy, and I was talking to the owner of the house, like, this is my house now. And I was just so sure about it. And then he called back and he said, well, it must really be yours because we had a contract that fell through. And
Whoa.
then we bought the house, and it was a little bit of a financial jump for us. And yet it was such a great decision. We lived there throughout our time in Nashville. And when we sold, like 12 years later, we more than doubled our money.
That's awesome.
And so it was just like, that was inspiration, that whole process of like, that's my house. Like, we weren't even considering buying a house, and then suddenly that's our house.
Yeah. Oh, that's so cool. I have a little bit of a similar story, but slightly different. Back in 2020, I bought this townhouse and was also a house situation, right? And I was in it for about 4 or 5 months, and I loved all the natural light, but it didn't have good visibility out. I just couldn't see out, and I was feeling a little claustrophobic in there. And I did some projects in the house, just small things, updated the backsplash in the kitchen, redid the master closet in a way that I wanted it. And, you know, logical minded me would have been like, just do a couple more projects, paint a
Mhm.
thing, hang some different art, get some different furniture, keep playing with it. Um, but one afternoon I was leaving, I worked with a chiropractor who, she was kind of energy oriented, did like a little bit of Reiki. And I was leaving her office, and all of a sudden I said out loud to myself, I need to sell my house. And I was like, whoa, I need to sell my house. Right. And again, like logical Alicia,
Right.
and like, you've only owned this house 4 months. What are you talking about?
Hmm.
I called up my realtor. She's like, well, the market's moved up a little bit. We could probably cover the costs that you had. So we do the things necessary to put the house on the market. And that day that we put it up on the market, I had an offer for $100,000 more than what I bought the place for. Like, it was like a 33% increase, right? In just this like super short amount of time that I owned this house. And
Yes.
it was truly inspired
Mhm.
that the human brain would have talked myself out of it. But
Exactly.
and this was only a handful of months after I had really learned about Abraham. And this was my first real experience of like, okay, I'm going to trust inspiration. And to your
Mhm.
point, right, looking at the evidence of these moments,
Yes.
it was a great outcome. So
Right. And so if you're not sure in the moment, you can always look back and learn from it. And you
absolutely.
weren't contemplating, should I sell my house? Shouldn't I? You got that hit of
Yeah.
sell your house,
Yep.
right? Just out of the blue. And that's a great way to know. I
Yep.
wasn't even thinking about that. And yet here's this thought.
Yeah. Yeah. It was good. So yeah, it's start with small things, I say, like for people who
Hmm.
are new to this idea and want to play with it and build their confidence,
Hmm.
start with small things, right?
Yes.
I got this nudge to go to that restaurant that I haven't been to for a while, right?
Hmm.
Just this morning, I got the nudge to take a different trail that I hadn't taken in a while. I don't know why. There wasn't like anything particular that
Hmm.
happened that was beneficial, but maybe I avoided something else,
Exactly.
right? On the
Exactly.
other trail. And I was like, huh, I haven't thought about that trail in a minute. Let me go take that. So But yeah, I would say, start with small, easy things and then start to play with some of the bigger things. It's like Bashar says, follow your highest excitement. And it can be, it's that moment to moment
Yeah,
small thing. And again, even the use of the words small versus big, right? Like that's all just human perception, right?
absolutely.
In terms of like infinite intelligence and creation, it's all the same, right? Small
Hmm.
and big. So, um, but it was helpful for me to build my confidence with some smaller things and then roll the dice on a big thing that felt truly inspired and it paid
I,
off.
I agree. Yes. And in closing, when we get a phone call from somebody and you're thinking, or you say, I was just thinking of you, like
Mhm.
that's connection, that's inspiration. Whether they pick up the phone or you pick it up, you're both connecting, you're both thinking of each other. And that's another area that you can play with when you're getting that phone call. Or if you call somebody and they say, I was just thinking of
Yeah.
you,
Yeah.
right? That's
That's confirmation.
inspiration.
I love it. I love it. Cool.
Yeah.
Well, hey, Colleen, thank you again for joining. I love that you're one of my regular guest hosts on this
I
now.
love it
So I
too.
love that you were inspired to share this idea. So
Absolutely.
great. Well, I look forward to our next topic. And until then, thank you so much.
Yeah. Namaste. Take care.
Bye.